chair of the Planning Committee, and the first thing I need to do is to read you the general information at the beginning of the meeting. There's no fire alarm planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass door over there, behind you to my left, and through the double doors onto the riverside at the back. Please muster at Café des Amis. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. This meeting is being minuted and recorded and will be audio streamed via the Council's website. The Westgate Garden gates on the riverside are locked at sunset, and members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass panel. So first of all, can I find out if there are any apologies, please, Andrea?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillors Ian Stockley and Keith Bothwell.
Thank you very much. And any substitutes, please?
Yes, we have Councillor Dan Watkins in for Councillor Ian Stockley and Councillor Andrew Harvey in for Councillor Keith Bothwell.
Thank you. So are there any declarations of interest by any councillors at this stage? Harry?
On the second application, there is an application for a drive-through restaurant that it says will likely go to McDonald's. I am an employee of a McDonald's restaurant, but I don't have any stakes in the company and I retain an open mind.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mackenzie. Thank you. Any other declarations?
Chair, I have a generic announcement to read out
Thank
on
you.
behalf of everyone. All or some councillors may have received correspondence from or spoken with applicants, agents, supporters or objectors, and some of the public speakers may also be known to members of the committee due to their work as councillors. Neither circumstance prevents councillors from participating in the meeting. However, any councillor who considers that they do not have an open mind in respect of any item on the agenda should not participate in the meeting when the relevant item is to be discussed. I also have from myself, rather strangely, in respect of item 8, which is Canterbury Road, one of the speakers, Helen Caddick, is a family friend.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Lovely. Thank you. There will be 8 public speakers tonight who will be heard immediately after the officers' presentations for each relevant item. Thank you. Can we go to the minutes of the meeting on the 19th of December, pages 7 to 11 in your papers? Can I have a confirmation by general assent that these are correct minutes of the meeting? Thank you, councillors. Thank you very much. That's confirmed. And then we move on to application number CA 22 00555, land rear of 51 Rough Common. I'm going to say, first of all, that Councillor Franklin won't take any part in this item and will leave the chamber for the duration of this particular item only. Thank you. And could I then invite Andrew Gamble, the planning officer, to introduce the application? Thank you.
Working on. Oh, there we go. We've got lift off. Yeah. Well, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This is an application for the erection of up to 23 dwellings to the land rear of 51 Rough Common Road, with some external alterations to 51 Rough Common Road included within the application as well. Members will recall that. Well, most members will recall that this application has been to 2 previous committees and that the last deferral was primarily in relation to the open space to the south of the site and how that was to be utilised. Just for members that haven't been at the previous committees, I'll do kind of a brief overview of the proposal. So what you can see kind of in the top part of the site is the former nursery buildings and hardstanding, kind of related to that former use, and then grassland elsewhere within the site. The site itself, so that kind of top portion where the yellow is on this particular plan, that's allocated for 28 dwellings within the current local plan. So kind of really that what I'm reiterating by showing this is that the southern portion of land that's been included within the application has been incorporated in order to mitigate the Studmarsh impact via the introduction of a small kind of biological nutrient plant and the maintenance of that particular land as grassland for the long term. And this particular plan here kind of essentially shows the parameters for the site. So as this is an outline application, the detail will come forth kind of at later reserve matters. But at the moment, what we're looking at is essentially dwellings being located within that portion of the site that is currently allocated, with the main access road coming through and the works of the existing dwelling. And that green area, so the kind of different shades of green, kind of being maintained for the Studmarsh mitigation and reptile mitigation. So the most recent committee deferred the application to allow officers to confirm whether any of the open space to the south of the site could be utilised as public open space. Ultimately, the land to the south is proposed as offsetting land for Studmarsh and in part also for reptile mitigation. And in order to achieve nutrient neutrality for Studmarsh, the land needs to remain as unaccessed meadow grassland in that portion of the site, as a change to urban parkland would effectively prevent the development from being nutrient neutral for the 23 dwellings. The applicant appreciates some of the concerns that were raised by the committee members at the previous committee regarding development in that southern portion, and proposes a condition which I'll bring up on the screen. We've proposed a condition, the applicants agreed to it, to essentially ensure that that particular parcel of the site kind of is maintained for the grassland and for the Studmarsh mitigation, including kind of the reptile mitigation as well as per condition 20. So that's agreed, and kind of hopefully that kind of addresses some of the concerns around development that might come forward on that southern portion. In addition, you will have noticed also that the latest annex report to committee, last time the councillors that were present at the committee brought up the idea of the viability assessment being reviewed at any time during development. And on reflection, the applicant kind of has sought to listen to what the councillors have said and agrees that actually the viability review could be carried out any time kind of during the development of the proposal, which would allow us obviously to assess viability in the event that an off-site solution comes forward and hopefully claw back on some of the affordable housing contributions that could be secured, which can't currently due to the viability. So for those reasons and the reasons set out in the report and the two previous reports previously presented, the application is recommended for grant subject to conditions and legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we now move to take, there's one speaker, Ben Gearing. Could I invite you to come to speak to this? Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. As you know, and as set out in the officer report, the northern portion of the application site is allocated in Canterbury's current local plan for 28 homes. The scheme before you proposes 23 homes within the allocation area. It relies upon the use of the adjoining land to the south, which is outside the allocation, to achieve nutrient neutrality, as well as providing receptor land. Members will be aware that across the district, homes, particularly on smaller schemes such as this, are held up because of the difficulties in achieving nutrient neutrality. So whilst we have been able to find a way forward for the scheme to be nutrient neutral, the cost in doing so, together with the reduction in unit numbers and SIL infrastructure costs, has affected the viability of the scheme and the ability to deliver affordable housing. In accordance with local plan policy, the viability has been independently assessed and verified by Canterbury's viability consultant, with the conclusions set out in the officer's report. To help address the members' concerns that we've heard in the last two meetings, as best we can, we've agreed to a Section 106 mechanism whereby the viability of the scheme can be reviewed should circumstances change. For example, should nutrient neutrality mitigation no longer be required or an alternative solution be available. And in light of members' comments at the last meeting, we also agree this mechanism should be enacted at any point, and again, secure via the Section 106. At the last meeting, members were also keen to explore the possibility of public access to the unallocated land to the south, and to ensure that this land would not be developed in future. Having listened to members' concerns, we are happy to agree a specific clause that prevents the land from being developed in the future. Under the current proposal, the exclusion of public access is required for achieving nutrient neutrality. However, should an alternative solution to nutrient neutrality be found, then this would not be required. We are happy to agree that in that event, the detailed design can allow for public access to the land and footpath connectivity to the south be provided, and we'd be happy for this to be secured by a planning condition or a clause within the Section 106 agreement. We therefore hope the provisions outlined above will give members comfort that the land to the south is safeguarded from development, and should an alternative solution to nutrient neutrality be found, the planning permission can allow for affordable housing contributions and the delivery of public access on land to the south at the allocation. I would like to add that as a local company, we are committed to the area and with a proven track record of delivering affordable homes and sports and other community infrastructure in the district. For example, two of our most recent planning permissions, comprising 42 homes in Whitstable and 220 homes in Seasalter, are now being delivered as 100% affordable housing schemes by affordable housing providers. With the hope the above changes address the reasons for deferral, and members can now endorse the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So what I would like to suggest is that that I accept the officer's recommendation that planning application be approved for the reasons set out in the report. We have had answers to the queries before, and the original July report to the Planning Committee is at Annex 1, and the subsequent September update is at Annex 2. Subject to safeguarding conditions, with the suggested amendment to Condition 17 in Annex 2 and a new condition set out paragraph 8 of this update report, and the completion of a legal agreement. Do I have a seconder? Thanks. Elizabeth Carr-Ellis. Thank you. And I'd like to open up the item for discussion, questions and any queries that members may have. So anybody like to start? Councillor Watkins, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to ask about nutrient neutrality and the condition it sounds like will be discharging. Funnily enough, this is actually sort of slightly political, isn't it? Because it was only a few weeks ago that the government suggested changing the nutrient neutrality rules, which would have enabled this scheme to go ahead without so much mitigation, and it would have allowed us to build a lot more affordable homes, not just in this project, but across the southeast. And they put the number at 100,000 additional homes if that government amendment had gone through. But sadly for us, I think the Labour Party in the House of Lords has blocked that. So it can't happen now, and we're stuck with these nutrient neutrality rules, which they probably come from a good place, but the impact of them is ultimately to stop development, to stop affordable housing. So this is the really rough edge of that policy, because I'm sure all of us here would like to see the affordable housing. But let's hope that in future the government or the Labour Party to change their view on that, and they make the change, and let's say that happened in a few years' time. And my question then is, at what point can the condition, essentially the charge which we talked about, secured on this planning consent, if we gave it, can it be enacted? So if it was, say, several years down the line and everything had been built and everything had come through as per the proposal, are we still then able to go back and say, well, we're going to change the land use then, or does the change have to actually happen on nutrient neutrality like pretty soon, i.e. before the houses have finished being built, if we're ever going to see the changes which could bring some further benefit to this project at a later date?
Could I ask Andrew Gambrell to answer that question? Thank you.
So at the moment, obviously, the proposal we've got in front of us proposes a mitigation scheme for Stodmarsh, which would need to be utilised at the moment because there's no alternative solution. Condition 9 of the the officer's report back from July essentially allowed for any alternative scheme to come forward. So say, for instance, it's all hypothetical, but they had they'd built maybe 5 units and they'd already obviously had to commit to a particular solution. There's nothing to say that actually kind of they couldn't adapt that particular system they've put in, or kind of provide an alternative scheme that would satisfy not only the Stodmarsh kind of issues, but also enable the kind of future dwellings on the site to come forward with an alternative kind of foul water scheme. There's nothing kind of preventing the timeline of that. You obviously in the future say, and the applicant obviously mentioned there that they were happy to include a clause about the grassland to the south being kind of opened up to the public. If it was the case, obviously, that in the future the Stodmarsh mitigation no longer required that actually that land was maintained, then that clause that was referred to could in theory enable that kind of wider public access of that land in the future.
Just to be clear, if I may, Chair, if that was after all the housing had been built, just realistically, does it happen that a developer would come back and say, actually, we will still, even though everything's done on this project, all the houses have moved in and we've spent all our money and received all our income in, we're going to come back and we're going to make, in this case, a change to use of that land, essentially, I suppose, making it an open space for the public if the sort of Stodmarsh and nutrient neutrality issue is resolved.
The answer is obviously that if the development was completed, the 23 houses were complete and the Stodmarsh mitigation was in place and the open space was required for Stodmarsh, then it would have to be kind of restricted. The public access would have to be restricted. But if it were the case during the course of construction that actually it was no longer required for the Stodmarsh mitigation because an alternative scheme could be reached, then it could be opened up as public access.
So just to confirm, fundamentally, it's really the end of the construction period that would dictate that kind of window of opportunity for us to have that patch of land being used for something else for the community. So might have a 2 or 3 year window. All right, thank you.
Please, could I invite other people to make comments on this? Councillor Buckman.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually quite happy that we've decided to protect the environment anyway, and that the bill got chucked out. But I'm also quite happy that the agent has listened to what we've asked for and come back and been very reasonable about it. It's just a little question about, had you not had to do neutrality things, it would have only been a handful of affordable housing anyway, wouldn't it? It would have been like 5, 7 houses, something like that, or even that. So in the grand scheme of things, we're not actually missing out, although it would be great if there was, we're not missing out on loads. Is that right?
Yeah, so the provision would have been 7, like you suggested, from 30% of the 23.
I mean, I just want to comment myself. I mean, I think that we're all unhappy that we don't get affordable housing anywhere. However, this whole problem, emerged during the process of this application. It was, this was not designed originally with the problem of Stodmarsh in mind. And, I think the retrospective changes that have had to be made and the reduction in the number of homes is the answer. And we have had our experts look at that as well. So, I mean, I'm not saying we're happy, but, we are where we are with this one. Anybody else like to make a comment? Councillor Carr-Ellis.
Yeah, I just want to agree. I'm very happy that the agent has listened to what we've said and turned things around. And I'd like to agree with you, Chair. It's a pity that we are where we are when the previous administration didn't build enough houses. And we're now having to put through schemes that perhaps we wouldn't have wanted to put through so much before. Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment? Fine. Then let's put this to the vote, Andrea, if we could. Thank you.
So that vote is carried with 11 in favour and none against and none abstaining.
You heard. Okay, good. Thank you. Right. So thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next application, item 7, pages 45 to 65. It's application number CA 22 02660, the Boulevard. So could I ask Jessica Harrison, the officer, to introduce the report? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This application proposes 2 retail units, a drive-through restaurant and a builder's merchant at Altira Business Park in Herne Bay. The application site outlined in red on this aerial view. To the south is Sainsbury's and some business units and a hotel and other uses on the park. The application has been referred to the Planning Committee as it departs from the adopted local plan. This is because the site's allocated in the current plan for business uses. As such, the development does conflict with policies EMP1 and EMP4 of the local plan. However, the site has been actively marketed for 14 years, and the evidence suggests that it's very unlikely business uses will now come forward on this site. Typically, retail and restaurant uses would be directed to the town centre. However, the applicant has demonstrated that these uses, due to their size and nature, cannot be located in the Herne Bay town centre. Members, just to show you what I'm showing on the plan here, the builder's merchant is located to the east of the site, which will be phase 1 coming forward first, taking access as a 4th arm from this roundabout. The second phase contains the 2 retail units in this building here and the drive-through restaurant to the east here, taking access from this existing roundabout. Here are some CGIs of the proposed units, the 2 retail units here, the drive-through restaurant and the builder's merchant. And this is a site photo just for context. The site's on the grassland here, and you can just see Sainsbury's on the right-hand side of the photo. So although the site is located on an existing business park, given the marketing that's been carried out for a significant amount of time, the proposed uses are considered to be acceptable in this instance. Concerns have been raised regarding the traffic impact of the proposal in the locality, and we've looked at this very carefully with KCC Highways. The modelling carried out does demonstrate that the traffic generated from the development can be accommodated on the highway network. However, this is subject to improvements being carried out off-site. The improvements are to Reculver Road, Mickleborough Hill Junction, which will turn into a mini roundabout as part of the Hillborough development, which has been consented. So there is a condition attached to this permission which makes sure that the retail units or the drive-through restaurant cannot be used until that mini roundabout work has been carried out. So as set out in the report, it's recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions and a legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And could I invite Sean McGrath to come and speak to this item? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. My name is Sean McGrath from WSP. I'm the agent for the application. Kitewood and Urban and Civic are promoting the wider regeneration of Altira Park to deliver high quality, much needed residential, commercial and employment floor space. The trade park that was consented in August last year has now been completed and the tenants are ready to move in. And next month, work will begin on the 67 new affordable homes at Blacksole Farm, which were approved in April. This planning application is the next phase of the master plan and will deliver 2 retail units to be occupied by B&M and the food warehouse, a McDonald's drive-through and a builder's merchant. The principle of retail use has already been established by Sainsbury's. The proposed retail units and the drive-through restaurant will be complementary to Sainsbury's. We have fully addressed the retail tests and the impact on the town centre is negligible. The proposed builders merchants will supply materials primarily for the building trade and jobbing builders. Given the number of new homes that are proposed in Herne Bay, a builders merchant should be welcomed. It will help the delivery of houses. This site, as you've heard, has been allocated for employment use for over 20 years, but has never been developed because there is not the demand. This proposal will create over 100 new jobs and promote economic development in Herne Bay. I know that there have been concerns expressed about McDonald's that it will cause traffic impact, but we've located it at the far end of the site, as far away from the public highway as possible. The queuing space in the car park is for 30 cars, and the McDonald's entrance is half a mile from Thanet Way. In short, there is no possibility of McDonald's having an impact on the wider highways network. In summary, the site is located within the built-up area on land that is allocated for development. This is a positive application that will deliver jobs and investment in a place that needs them. Officers have confirmed that there are no unacceptable impacts, so I do hope that you will support your officer's recommendation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I want to propose that that we accept the officer's recommendation in this case, and Section 101 grants, subject to safeguarding conditions and legal agreement. And I have a seconder in Councillor Smith. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. I'd like to open this up for comment and discussion. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I have no sort of strong objections to the three companies that have been proposed for this site. They're going, as the gentleman said, it's going to bring forward a great deal of employment, but they do also generate a great additional traffic, particularly across, if the roundabout does get built, across Blacksole Bridge, which is narrow, in a particularly bad state of condition. And it's a railway bridge as well. So my first question is, I suppose, has any studies been done to ensure that the additional traffic that's going to be using that bridge is actually going to not be, end up collapsing on top of the railway line at a critical time? The other concern is about the Townmead estate. At the moment, there is one access road from the Townmead estate, which is not actually addressed in this plan. So people coming across from that side, from Townmead or from Pilgrim Way and so on, they have to cross a dangerous road as it is at the moment. Either on foot or by using their car. But you know, this again is going to have additional traffic going through it, making it even more dangerous. If traffic is coming off the from Herne and Herne villages across Margate Road flyover, which goes past the petrol station, the Sainsbury's petrol station, they approach a roundabout, and access from the petrol station is really obscured. Again, you've got additional traffic coming down onto that roundabout, making it extremely dangerous for possible collisions there. So it's all about, what I've seen so far, it's all been about the Reculver Road side, you know, with the cycle, the bridges, etc. And nothing about how it's going to be made safer for those on the other side of that road. I dare say, of course, you know, the McDonald's traffic will actually come down to the roundabout at Sainsbury's, the access roundabout at Sainsbury's. Well, that's for them to fight out, I dare say. We've seen the results of the traffic queues at Whitstable, which has blocked the 299 on many occasions. But you know, in theory, that should not happen at this site. My main concern is about access and the road conditions and whether they will be made better.
Thank you, Councillor Mellish. Jessica, could I ask you to comment on the traffic movements question?
Yeah, of course. We looked at the traffic impact in particular over a long period of time with the applicant and KCC Highways. And the traffic modelling that's being carried out does show that with all the junctions, the development, it would operate in capacity. It's only the Reculver Road junction that needs to be improved, made into a mini roundabout. That work needs to be carried out to make the development acceptable, and that's why there's a condition on there making sure that's done before the retail units in the drive-through can be used. And that mini roundabout's being put in by the Hillbrook development, already consented. So it was only that junction that we found that needs those off-site mitigation works.
Councillor Mellish, you can come back if you wish.
Thank you, Chair. Doesn't really answer my question because the mini roundabout at Reculver Road, Mickleborough Hill, doesn't answer the problem of those trying to cross from the Talmead side across that road, because the bridge itself has there is no footpath. It's just sheer traffic at sharp corners as well. And now there is an adjoining building site which is going to get more and more developed over the coming years. 1,500 homes going up on that, with the additional construction traffic that will be using the roads as well. Now, there are assurances that, that Taylor Wimpey will be given access at least to one other constructor on that site, but no guarantee that the third constructor on that site will actually have access through their roads, therefore pushing them onto Reculver Road, across Blacksall Bridge, and up Margate Road. So you're not convincing me that the safety is being built into this scheme. The creation of a mini roundabout doesn't not do that. What are you going to do about the people trying to cross from Talmead? I've almost knocked down pedestrians on that junction, trying to cross from Talmead side across to to go and shop at Sainsbury's. It's unsafe, and nothing in this plan so far convinces me that it's going to be changed.
Do you have any other comments to make, or no? Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Thanks, Chair. I should say, first of all, actually, I am the Kent County Councillor for this area. But I completely agree with Councillor Mellish that exit route for pedestrians from Talmead Estate over to Ortira Park is incredibly dangerous. But by massive coincidence, after about 2 years of fighting for it, and thankfully at the end, Kitewood helped us by granting a little bit of land for a new pavement. We're actually starting this week pedestrian crossing over Margate Road from Talmead to make that safer for pedestrians. Although actually I have to use my Kent County Council members grant to fund it, Tom, rather than developer, which maybe is something that you do wonder, like, why the developer isn't paying that. But that's another story. So that actually partly answers your question. But I've got another concern, is that and I know this because I'm the Kent County Council, and I've worked very hard with Beltinge residents and the Beltinge ward CCC councillors on this whole development. The mini roundabout between, for Mickleborough Hill and Reculver Road, that was only one part of the sort of mitigation for all the extra traffic coming on to our roads because of this Ortira Park development and the Hillsborough development. And the other part, other than the mini roundabout, was speed calming measures along the length of Reculver Road. So it's things like speed hump, it's raised tables and some additional signage, and it's a 20-mile-per-hour zone. So why would we not ask the developer to also put in place that broader mitigation of which the roundabout is part in the same timescale? Can we change the consent here to say, or the condition, sorry, to say, yes, you've got to do the roundabout before we build McDonald's, etc. But you've also actually got to put in the raised tables and 20 mile per hour on Reculver Road, because in my mind, they're linked. It's all about safer journeys by road.
Thank you. Jessica, what do you think about that? It's a possible addition to the condition.
No, but I think we can do it because the KCC
Councillor Watkins, it appears that the summary of this is that Kitewood is doing those changes that you've described, and it is likely that they're coming on board at the same time because of the speed of the development or the process of that development. However, KCC have not asked for those to be conditioned, just the roundabout to be conditioned. So that's why that's the condition. They haven't found it necessary to suggest that. So that's the answer.
Forgive my my lack of planning knowledge, and actually this was all consented long before I became the councillor, actually. Can we not ask as the planning authority here that we add in that extra condition to protect, you know, residents essentially?
I feel like we have this conversation quite a lot. If KCC say that is reasonable mitigation, that's what we put in the conditions. We don't have any reason to add any further ones. That's the answer. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I just asked for a bit of clarification. The roundabout we're actually talking about being reduced, is that the roundabout that is coming, the first roundabout you come off the slip road off the Thanet Way?
Sorry, it's not a roundabout at the moment, but it's proposed to be turned into a mini roundabout as part of the Kitewood Hillborough scheme for 180 homes. So it's consented road improvement, but it needs to be carried out before these retail units and the drive-through can be used. That mitigation is absolutely necessary for this scheme, which is why we've secured it in the condition. So it's the Mickleborough Hill, it's just over the bridge where there's a junction. It'll be turned into a mini roundabout.
If
you want to come back.
If I may come back, Chair. That's going to slow the traffic there. I've said it at every meeting, council meeting planning on this development, that the roundabout that comes off of the slip road, that's now the large roundabout where you got the petrol station is and the slip road into the Sainsbury's site, and it diverts onto Margate Road. I kind of misled there, so it's my fault, but I thought that was going to be reduced, and I thought, hooray. Now, my concern, and this has mentioned this at every meeting, is I believe that is the dangerous roundabout, and that needs a reduction in size for the amount of traffic that's going to be entering that, because you're going to have people coming from the district coming off the Thanet Way onto that roundabout. In my opinion, and I'm not a highways man, and if KCC says it's fine, that's fine. I'm just waiting. Well, I don't want it to happen, but in my eyes, it's an accident waiting to happen on that roundabout. And with the extra flow of traffic going into there, with a drive-through McDonald's, there are going to be crashes there, and it's going to. McDonald's unfortunately creates a bit of how can I put it, a boy racer situation sometimes, but there's something we can do until that happens. But that is my concern on that roundabout, and I say it every time, and I will carry on every time this comes to application. As for the 30 line cars coming into McDonald's, waiting to go to McDonald's, that's going to have more of an impact onto Sainsbury's, I should think, on the other sites of the development, i.e. if you've got cars going into McDonald's and you can't get onto the building site, that's going to also cause a friction, I should think, with the builders trying to get to their builders merchants. But that's all for highways to sort out, and we'll just look at this picture in the future. I don't think the roundabout's safe. I think it is reducing on that one, but I broken record. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else want to make a contribution on this one? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, with the wary of being repetitive, but I have very serious concerns about the traffic on that roundabout as well. And I don't think it's people queuing from McDonald's drive-through that will back onto it, but it's people coming out of McDonald's then stop traffic coming off the Thanet Way on the slip road, and that already frequently queues back on the slip road when Sainsbury's is busy. So it is a concern, and I realise that highways haven't raised any objections. My other concern as well is the litter problem. We're going to get an antisocial behaviour that's likely. It's already quite a problem in Sainsbury's car park in the evening with nuisance drivers congregating there, and I think this is only going to exacerbate that problem there at Sainsbury's.
Thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment or a question? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment, really. I'm going to imagine that originally with the roundabout we're talking about, literally when it was first put in, I'm looking at the scheme going forward. What everybody knew, I would imagine, that these things would develop. So there must have been some thought to the impact on the traffic and the design of it at the beginning. I would agree with my colleagues here. I use it very regularly, and at the moment it's on certain days it's very, very busy, and we had this development into it quite rightly. It would attract more cars and business and whatever in there. That's the whole point of it, and employment. I get all that. It's not a problem, but it is that will become an issue. And I just we've all kind of spoke about it tonight, and I think people need to just listen to that, because I think if anything comes of it in the future, it's not that we've not spoke about it. It's important to air that opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the plan in front of us, I cannot see any indication of any speed bumps or sleeping policemen, whatever you wish to call them, on the car park. I know that these kind of sites are very good at attracting that sort of, and I think it's been referred to by other members, that sort of antisocial boy racer type behaviour, for want of a better phrase. And I can't, I think I'd be quite keen to see that condition implemented. And if I've missed it, then I'm happy to be corrected. But it would strike me as a must-have for a site like that, because once the shops close and once the drive-through, the drive-through is going to be fairly. I mean, I don't know what we don't have any idea of the opening times for the drive-through yet, do we? But those sorts of places tend to stay open quite late. So I'd just be keen to see what sort of measures could be in place, what sort of condition could be put in place to prevent that sort of behaviour, because it is a problem all across East Kent. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wonder whether Jessica or Simon, do you want to comment in relation to that? I don't know whether there are any speed restrictions or no. I think the answer is, in summary, that the road is already there. Any speed bumps or whatever else would be not in relation to this particular development, and they're not developing that road, as I understand.
Can I come back on that?
Yeah,
I probably didn't make myself entirely clear. What I was referring to was the car park itself, and not the road by it. Just so we're clear on the same page. It can be used as a circuit by boy racers, or I don't know if there's a correct term for that, but I'm talking about that car park area being used as a racetrack, and mitigations are needing to be in place to prevent that from happening.
Okay, I gather what you're talking about is whether or not sort of antisocial behaviour really has been factored in, and whether or not there have been any mitigations. Should we just check that? Hang on a minute. Thank you.
We can't be prescriptive then.
No, Councillor Prentice and the rest of the committee, what we could do with this, because obviously we've heard from other people that there are already problems on car parks on that site, we could put an informative on this. It's not a condition, but an informative to say that the committee is concerned about antisocial behaviour in the car park. We already have, anyway, a condition that antisocial behaviour or crime has to be designed out. So there has to be conversations with the police on that, and our officers can take this particular point about this car park to that discussion, and they have to sign off the condition. So I think that gives us a mechanism for looking at that. Councillor Thomas.
I'm just looking for a bit of clarification. This is a planning committee, and this application is come to us for committee for EMP1 and EMP4. Now, I need a little bit of guidance on that, but underneath it says principal loss of employment site, character not appearance, living conditions. Now, obviously, if you've got shops going there or a larger builders merchants, there say, or whatever, retail going in there, that is slightly different to a McDonald's drive-through. You will have an increase in noise and smells. You're definitely going to have an increase in vehicle movements. You've got a new little housing estate going on that site. So as the planning committee, I'm just trying to, I'm asking, and we've got parking and highways. Now, parking and highways, we've highlighted that tonight as a major concern for extra pollution of cars going onto the site, extra vehicle movements. We're already stretched with vehicle movements on that site already. Sustainable and air quality. Two of the main reasons we would, if this was an application, a fresh application from day one, when this site come live probably about 8 years ago, or yeah, about 6-7 years ago, we may have refused this on those type of grounds as not a suitable site for a McDonald's. It states a McDonald's, so it's not a secret. Drive-through. I'm asking whether there are planning grounds for us to refuse on those grounds. I think it is the McDonald's drive-through that's causing the controversy, because that's the one that's going to create more vehicle movements. I'm wondering if your proposal falls, Chair, whether or not I could propose, after your proposed refusal, on the grounds of EP1 and EMP1 and EMP4. So I'm just throwing it out there, Chair. If your motion falls, then I would propose that if someone was to agree to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. But before we go to the vote, is there anybody else who wants to make any substantive comments on this application? Okay, so we will put that to the vote. Please, Andrea. Yes, so a vote for is a vote to accept the officer's recommendation. You've heard all the comments people have made. Thank you very much.
So that vote is carried with 9 in favour, 2 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. We need to move on to the next. Sorry? Oh, sorry. I just thought you said. Sorry? Oh, we're on to 8. Yeah. So we move on to application 8, which is CA 23-01124, VAR variation, 49 to 55 Canterbury Road, pages 66 to 77. So please could I ask Christian de Grusse to introduce the application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this site is located along Canterbury Road in Whitstable and is immediately adjacent to the Whitstable Town Conservation Area. Approval had previously been given at committee in 2020 for a second floor roof extension, along with fenestration and external material changes to facilitate 12 flats. This variation seeks to amend the front and rear elevations and roof extension of this previously approved scheme. As the principle of the development has been considered to be acceptable, this would be the amendments that are now being considered. So here we have the front elevation as approved in 2020 and now the proposed. As you can see, this variation seeks to replace the refurbished red tiles at first floor and the brickwork at ground floor with timber weatherboarding. There is also a reduction in the size of the previously approved dormer windows and their configuration to accommodate the introduction of 2 additional dormer windows. As you can also see, there are changes to the size and detailing of the windows at first floor, along with the introduction of railings at ground floor and the removal of bay windows and single-storey front additions. Officers will consider this to represent a visual improvement compared to the previously approved scheme in 2020. And now moving on to the as approved and proposed rear elevations. So red brick that was approved previously is now being replaced with white render. The previously approved first floor balconies now also stretch across the entire width of the rear elevation and utilise glass balustrades instead of metal railings. Similar to the front, the dormer windows are being reconfigured to allow for an additional 2. A small roof extension is also being proposed, which you can see here when comparing the 2 drawings. So here's a site photo of the application site's rear elevation. And this is its relationship with the surrounding properties. So as you can see, given the use of both render, timber weatherboarding and brickwork within the street scene, the revised material palette is considered to be acceptable, and overall, compared to what was previously approved, the changes proposed are considered acceptable with regard in visual terms, and are considered to be acceptable and have an acceptable impact, I should say, on the setting of the Whitstable Town Conservation Area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 5 speakers, and so I'll call those speakers in turn. Michael Shoebridge first. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors and chair. I am a chartered architect now practicing over 35 years, and I've been asked to speak against the proposal today. Do the proposed changes to the approved scheme from 2020 continue to represent an acceptable impact to the area? As you know, an important consideration in determining this outcome is recognising whether the development has sufficient regard to the site's context, applying the following points: visual impact, including impact on the local townscape character, form and density of the development, including scale, massing and materials, privacy and amenity of neighbouring buildings, including overshadowing, outlook and light. Every objection made against this scheme has focused primarily on the rear elevation and how these points have been contravened. impacting on the residents that face onto it, as well as the public viewing it from side streets. The first slide here, the issue is that the proposal has grown in size in its footprint and massing. What is concerning is that this issue has either been missed or disregarded by the case officer, as it has not been listed among the changes in his report and his summing up. It is a very important aspect and so must be revisited here. These elevations have been cleared up and cleaned up to remove the massive dotted and dashed lines in the application that made it almost impossible to read the drawings clearly. So now the dark red highlights the facade nearest to you as you view it. The receding colours make it clear to see how the approved scheme above has several setbacks in the facade that help break up the elevation into smaller elements that mirrors the scale of Whitstable's dwellings in the area. There are deep setbacks at each end to allow the adjacent buildings affordable natural light and reduce overbearing. The proposed scheme below has removed all of the setbacks, pushing the facade forward to all corners of the site, creating an unbroken wall that is out of keeping to its surroundings. The balconies that were limited in width before, as mentioned, now run the entire length of the facade, increasing its monolithic presence. Slide 2, please. This image below shows the effect in 3 dimensions that the lack of setbacks has to the adjacent buildings and the visual impact to the neighbours opposite. It's clear how much larger the scheme has become below. Slide 3, please. The artist impression at the top is the approved scheme that stipulated the finish to be brick. You can see the setbacks work well within its surroundings. The bottom image is not an artist impression. That is as it stands today, built without planning permission in render. Slide 4, please. And you don't need to debate over the drawings to understand how oppressive this structure is. You can go and see it for yourself in 3 dimensions. In closing, this is the reality. These are photos of how that wall of white render imposes itself onto the cottages that face onto it. Not unlike those massive cruise liners docking in Venice Harbour. Its overbearing mass is so out of place within its context that it is shocking. This proposal should be refused. I thank you.
Thank you. We move along to the next speaker, please, who is Kate O'Donovan, please.
Good evening, councillors, Chair. I live directly behind and overlook the development. The current build remains in glaring contrast to the approved plans. The National Planning Framework states that planning policies and decisions should ensure that developments will add to the overall quality of the area, are visually attractive as a result of good architecture, are sympathetic to local character and history, including the surrounding built environment. I will refer throughout my piece to quotes. These are all from the original Planning Committee report. We object to for the following reasons. 1, design. The proposed build is not in keeping with the scale, character, or appearance of the area. It is excessively large and out of character. The overwhelming commercial scale is completely out of place and is in opposition to the existing local architecture of 2-storey fishermen's cottages. The build has compromised our living conditions and those of our neighbours and does not follow the existing skyline. Quote, the local plan requires the new development has sufficient regard for the character and context of the application site and preserves or enhances the character and appearance of the conservation area. The development juts out beyond the original buildings and is ugly and unsympathetic to existing architecture. It is far higher, wider and bigger than original plans. Photo 10, please. 2, loss of light and overshadowing. The build overshadows our living space and looks directly into our bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, dining rooms and gardens. The roof form has increased in pitch angle, which makes it more shockingly visible from our properties and further encroaches on our privacy. Photo 10, please. It also impacts the light into our properties and gardens. Quote, the proposed roof extension would be of a similar size, scale and dormer window detailing, so would sit comfortably on the building and be in keeping with that of surrounding properties. The current build does not have the setbacks that were in the original plan. These would have allowed for daylight to stream through. 1, please. Materials and density of the building. The approved scheme showed a rear facade finished in brick. The development is rendered white. This is completely out of character to its surroundings and the conservation area and town of Whitstable. Quote, the proposed materials would match the existing building and neighbouring properties with red brickwork. 4, please. As already mentioned, the exclusion of setbacks, choice of materials, the increased length of balconies and the increased roof pitch all create a building that is unacceptably overbearing in mass and scale. This is considered, quote, this is considered the proposed development would have an acceptable impact on the living conditions of neighbouring property occupiers in accordance with policy DBE3 of the Canterbury District Local Plan. The current build categorically does not. In conclusion, 8.59 of the local plan states, alterations and extensions to existing buildings should not lead to overlooking, overpowering or overshadowing of neighbouring properties. The materials, size, increased roof pitch, absence of setbacks and change to balconies is not acceptable and is not in keeping with the local plan. It impacts negatively on neighbours, the town and character of Whitstable. Thank you for your time.
Could I please call the next speaker? And just to remind people that it is 3 minutes and we have to keep you to time. It's Helen Craddock.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. We strongly object to this build, as Whitstable Nest have not built what they were granted to build. They have failed to put in setbacks. They have failed to create the sloped roof on the second floor or to put in dormer windows which would have lessened the impact of the building. Instead, they have built a bulky, flat-roofed structure which is far bigger and much higher than any of us were led to believe would be built. They have added extra bedrooms to the second floor. With the addition of greater numbers of residents to the flats, this will put further strain on parking in the surrounding streets in an area already lacking parking. Without the setbacks, this bulky block of flats is intrusive, imposing and overbearing. It is no exaggeration to say that with its bulk and white facade, it feels now like we have the Titanic parked to the end of our gardens. We have lost 3 hours of sunlight in our garden. In the summer, we had sunlight until 9:30 in the evening. It now falls behind the flats at 6:30. A local estate agent has advised us that we and our neighbours have now lost £25,000 on the value of our homes because of this building. We have lived in our home for 18 years. We have invested in our home and feel thoroughly let down by the planning department, who at no point have shut down this development when it would have been obvious to them that Whitstable Nest weren't building according to the plans granted. In fact, from the laying of the foundations, planning would have been able to see that the flats were being erected from the outset as one large block. This building in no way reflects the charming fishermen's cottages that surround it or the Whitstable Conservation Area. It doesn't follow the roof line and is a blight on the area. People who have viewed the build from our garden have been lost for words. They have been shocked that something as incongruous as this has been allowed to be constructed in one of the oldest parts of Whitstable. I am a composer and my husband is a writer and we work from home. The music and voices that will come from the flats will affect our ability to work and concentrate. This building has affected my mental health and sense of well-being. I burst into tears when we returned from our holiday in 2022 and I saw how enormous the building had become and how high. I feel depressed every time I look at it and I no longer enjoy sitting in my garden as the building is overbearing and we are overlooked directly by 12 large windows belonging to 7 of the flats into our kitchen, our living area and our daughter's bedrooms. Whitstable Nest have never made any effort to understand or to speak to us about our concerns. From the outset, our objections have been ignored. We understood that the council were there to protect residents. What is the point of a planning department if a developer can build whatever they like? If you promise to deliver something and then create something entirely different in any other walk of life, you would be sacked. Why should these developers be treated any differently? Thank you.
So, thank you very much. Please could we move to the next speaker, Councillor Claire Turnbull. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, yeah, thanks. Good evening, councillors. You've already heard how this proposal contravenes the National Planning Policy Framework, so I won't go into that one again. It also contravenes policy DB through E3 of the Canterbury District Local Plan, which states the distinctive character, diversity and quality of the Canterbury District will be promoted, protected and enhanced through high quality and inclusive design, which reinforces and positively contributes to the local context. As Michael Shoebridge has already said, the officer's report refers to changes in render and balconies, but does not refer to the removal of the recesses you can see here on the upper photo. The previous plan, which was agreed at committee and accepted as a compromise by residents, was brick and was broken up by these recesses, mimicking to some extent the original building. It was agreed on the grounds that it would match the existing building and neighbouring properties with red brick facework, white framed windows, roof tiles with lead work to the dormers, grey metal balconies, etc. The building is currently standing in the current application does in no way meet these criteria. In fact, it's almost identical to a variation which was refused in 2022 on the grounds that the proposals for the elevations and roof failed to preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. The proposal did not accord with the policies HE1 and HE6 of the Local Plan 2024 and the Draft Local Plan and the NPPF. So in summary, the uniform white rendered building presents a dominant, uniform and blocky appearance rather than the more textured and varying look of the agreed proposal. This is totally out of keeping with the look of surrounding buildings and appears striking and incongruous. And this blocky uniformity is extremely detrimental to the outlook for the neighbours. So this is contravening policies HE1 and HE6, which are about the historic environment and heritage assets and the conservation area, specifically the impact of the proposal on the townscape, roofscape, skyline and landscapes, and the relative scale and importance of buildings in the area. When the plan was approved, the original plan was approved, on the application, on the approval, there was no indication of the planned finishes on the plan or elsewhere on the application. And so the agreement was on condition that the materials should be submitted before the work was commenced and that they would be submitted to the council and approved in writing. Were these submitted before it was commenced? Did they correspond with the proposed view, as in the design and access statement, which appears to be the only indication of the appearance? This is from the design and access statement, the top photo. That seems to be the only evidence of what the finish was going to be on this rear, and there was a condition that that the materials were submitted to the council for approval, written approval, before it was built. And I haven't seen any indication that this was done, and I don't know whether it was or not. You might wish to ask about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, please can I invite Pat Mills to speak. Thank you.
Good evening. I've obviously got a lot to deal with. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to have to wing it because everything I presented now is a bit out of the window with these objections. I mean, the first thing I'd like to say is that the applicants didn't intend to be where they are today. I mean, an application was submitted to vary the scheme before construction. The refusal came quite late. They were, to a certain degree, past the point of no return. We've been working with the applicant, I'm Clegg Architects, by the way, since the beginning of the year, and we've been working with your colleagues at the planning department since April with a pre-app to try and unravel where we are. There does seem to be some misunderstanding as to what we're proposing here. Basically, what has been built isn't in accordance with the approved scheme, we know that. the scheme that's been submitted for approval looks to vary what's been built. So the building is no higher than it's previously been approved. The roof slopes front and rear will be pitched. The flat roof at the back shall be removed. The frontage will be divided into the elevations that you previously saw, and perhaps if we could have that up on the screen if it's possible, the existing approved and the application that we're submitting would be very useful so we can see what's actually being submitted now. But generally I feel no one's actually upset with the front elevation. I think that actually provides a enhancement of what was approved and actually will bring improvement to the setting of the site, the character locally. The setback with the provision of railings is far more characterful and in keeping than the original design. So I think in terms of the wider public viewpoint, this actually represents an enhancement of the conservation area over and above what the original scheme did. I take the point that the biggest objections are toward the rear, so I'll refer to that now. As I mentioned, what you've been seeing in the photographs is as built, and which we recognise needs to be amended. The proposal is to reinstate a pitch roof on the back of the building. It is slightly steeper than proposed, but with respect, the pitch that was approved is too slack. You couldn't put a plain clay tile on that roof. It had to be a concrete interlocking tile because it's too shallow. Typical Whitstable pitches are 45 to 47 degrees. We've gone in between is about 40. It will give the right pitch for the character and for the dormer windows and will allow a plain clay tile to be used. The balconies are shown, or sorry, the rear elevation is shown currently bare. It has a layering to go on that yet with the balconies. The grounds, the enclosures, etc., have to be finished. So you're seeing this building in a way in its worst scenario, and as I say, in a situation which we are looking to change. And I would ask the committee to review back and have a look at the drawings that have been submitted, the proposed and approved sections, so you can see the roof pitches and the elevations front and rear. I'd also say that render at the back of the property is actually fundamentally in keeping locally, and if you stand on that site and look around, all the backs of the buildings around us are actually rendered as well, so it is in keeping. I probably need more time to cover the other points, but perhaps you can debate those based upon some of the help I've hopefully added today.
Thank you for your contribution. Thank you very much. I'm just going to confer for 1 second, if you could bear with me, please. Could I start by saying that I feel that we've heard some very detailed representations. There's quite a lot of material in all of that. I certainly feel that we haven't heard many problems with the front of this building, but clearly with the rear, you've seen the pictures, you've heard the experience of it, and it's already been built in contravention of what was originally agreed. I think we do have grounds to refuse, but I would like to hear a bit of discussion first, because I'd like to get the sense of the committee and what everybody else is thinking. Councillor Buckman.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, when I first read this, it actually seemed like it actually hadn't been built, because when I've driven past it, you've got all the strapping down the front and you can hear it flapping around in the wind. But now you've actually shown pictures of how bad it is at the back there. It's just like this big white lump of horribleness. I just can't understand how it can get this far before anyone's said anything. And I would just like to say, you know, does anyone ever go out and look at things during development and things? 'Cause it's quite obvious, it would have been quite obvious with the foundations and how things are being built, how big it was going to be. And obviously you wouldn't know it was going to be rendered white at the end. And I'd also like to say that's, I would guess that's sort of a cheaper option as well, to block work it and then render it rather than using brickwork. So I don't know if then the contributions that are made, I don't know if that affect, like the price of build affects the amount of contributions. But yeah, I just think it's awful that it's got this far without nothing being done. That's all.
Thank you very much. Do we want to comment on the toing and froing that's gone on at this stage, or just wait for other comments? I think that there has been a lot going on in the background, but it probably won't help us make a decision. But I hear what you've got. I hear the points you're making, and I think those points are echoing some of the contributions that we've had. Councillor Jones, wasn't it?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with my colleague. I just wanted to say if there was ever an application, permission given to have absolutely gone completely off sync, this is the one, I think. I mean, considering what was given as permission to where we are now, it's completely different. And I just can't believe, as our colleague said, that in that build to get to where we are, you know, this has completely changed. And all the things that have been said to people's loss of light, the overbearing, I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's just, you know, shouldn't this really have been a retrospective application rather than a variation? This is not even, this isn't a variation. A variation is a window here and a door and maybe a balustrade, whatever. This is, for me, a complete and utter retrospective. It's been built, done, completely not what was agreed. So for me, well, I'm staggered, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got several people waiting to speak. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I think I might jump the queue there. I just need asking for a little bit of clarification. I do recall this one coming to committee a few years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was refused at committee and then it went to the inspectorate and the inspectorate granted. Is that correct?
I think there was an original approval and there was another one that was rejected, a change that was rejected. I think that's what happened. It is in the report, actually.
I was trying to find it and I couldn't find it in the report.
Okay,
So
it's just
trying to
fairly near
flick
the
it through and
beginning.
everything. I mean, as I said, I've not... Sorry, Chair, can I carry on? Sorry. Yeah, it's just trying to... As Councillor Jones-Roberts, it baffles me that this enforcement, but it does stem the side that our enforcement isn't strong enough for this council. It's not doing the job and it's not fit for purpose. It needs to be looked at, and if developers or builders don't build to plan, we do have to set an example, and if it's got to come down, it has to come down. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Yeah, so I just want to support what other councillors said and what one of the public speakers said. What is the point of a planning department or even a council if we're going to let stuff like this fly? They've proposed one thing and built a totally different thing, and I do believe that if we don't refuse this now, then it sets a precedent for other developers to do this in the future, to promise one thing and then do something totally different. We do need to set an example of this, I believe, and so I'm minded to refuse this application.
I think we have to be really careful when we're talking about this in terms of general principles about the council generally. We've got to stick to the application, the merits of the application. Could I just ask everybody? I do appreciate people are concerned about what they've seen because they didn't realise it had already been built. But can we, perhaps just focus on what the outcome is we want from today? I think where I am is Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick question on the materials and finishes. And I wondered, did they ever come to the planning officers at any point for approval?
I think that we we heard that there has been stuff going on in the background. We heard this from the agent, that there have been discussions. I just really want us to stick to the merits and demerits of this particular application so that we can determine it today or decide whatever else we want to do. That's what I would need to do. Councillor Prentice.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go over the points about planning enforcement because I think they have been made by other members. For me, the issue is context. Now, in some parts of Whitstable, I think a design like the one we've seen at the rear of this property, I have no issue with the front of the property. I think from what I can see from the designs, that looks fine. But again, it's the question, I suppose, is about if it is complete, is it being completed? Is the frontage being completed as well in the way that we're being told it should be? But I don't believe this is in keeping with the conservation area, and a conservation area. Surely you're looking not just at the frontage of properties, but you are looking at the rear of properties as well, because if a conservation area is only about what you see from the street, then the whole thing seems a little bit pointless. And I think whether we like it or not aesthetically is probably not the point. It's not being built to the agreed plans. And there are reasons, as we have heard, perhaps, why we are where we are. But I'm not entirely sure how we go from here. But there's something has gone quite wrong along the way here.
Thank you. I think Councillor Thomas wanted to come back and then Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, if this was coming back as a retrospective plan application on just paper plans, we'd be looking at refusing this on scaling and massing. So it's overbearing. It's bigger than what would be on the new drawings. So on that grounds, I think we have enough to actually refuse his application on those grounds alone. For getting it built, if it was just plans, we have to look at it as, would we approve these plans as they stand? And I don't think we would. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I do always think as councillors, one of the main things we should be doing is rewarding people in our community who do the right thing and not those who do the wrong thing. And like everyone else there, well, the other councillors have spoken, there are aspects of this which are very concerning. I understand why so many residents are here today. I'm assuming from what's been said that an enforcement discussion is now taking place with the applicant for what's happened before. If we were to go with the officer's recommendation tonight to approve the new application, does that mean that the enforcement action being taken is just struck out, so the whole thing is then settled, or does the enforcement conversation continue with a view to reaching some sort of settlement on the whole matter?
I think the resolution is this application. I think so. This is what we're trying to say. The resolution of the debates and discussions that have gone on is this revised application. So there isn't anything else happening.
So anything else that's going on outside of this specific application would still carry on?
There isn't anything else going on because the resolution is to bring this altered application to committee.
Right, which goes back to Councillor Jones's earlier point that this is more like a retrospective planning application than a variation, but that point's already been made.
Thank you, everybody. Are there any other... Councillor Corrales.
I want to say I personally didn't find it ugly, but I am a huge fan of brutalist architecture, and Whitstable is not a brutalist architecture town. It is a very sweet, nice fishing village, and it deserves to have an environment that reflects that. And if this was Midtown Berlin, I'd be going, well, hey, go for it. But as it is, no, I'm afraid I would be minded to refuse it.
Fine. I think we've heard from everybody who wants to speak. And I think my proposal is that we do refuse this application on the basis that the rear of the building appears excessively bulky, which is exacerbated by the white render, and the massing doesn't preserve or enhance or reflect the appearance and character of the adjacent conservation area or buildings. I'm happy to have additional comments on that, but do I have a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie, thank you. So, any other comments before we put that to the vote? Yeah, just a second. Clarifying the wording on the conservation areas because it's actually sandwiched between two. It isn't actually in it, but there's one to the right and left or back and front, depending on how you look at the site. So that's where I am. Is that okay? If there are no other comments, could we, Andrea, please put this to the vote? And to vote for is a vote to refuse this application.
So that is carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you very much, everybody. Should we just take a 5-minute break because there will be people who want to leave and people may need to take a comfort break. And we'll have a 5-minute break now. Thank you. Please, could I ask people who are leaving to leave now, and for people to reconvene the committee, please? Thank you very much. Are we all ready? Yes. So thank you. We're going on to item 9, CA 23 01232, 31 St Peter's Place. Ashley Kynes, please can you introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this application, there you go. This application relates to 31A St Peter's Place in Canterbury, which is situated within Canterbury City Conservation Area and is brought to the committee as it is a council-owned property. The proposal is for triple glazed timber windows, external insulation with render, increase in ridge height, solar panels to front and side roof slopes, and the installation of an air source heat pump. The Council aims to use this application as a blueprint for the future upgrading of the energy efficiency of their housing stock. So this is just the site location here, St Peter's Place roundabout, just to the south. And then on the left, we have the existing elevations, and on the right, we have the proposed. As you can see, it's a ramp being inserted to the front there with the solar panels on the front and side roof slopes. So the proposed timber windows, external render and solar panels are considered to rate acceptably to the context of the site and would preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. Given the separation distance from the site to neighbouring properties, it's considered that no unacceptable impact on living conditions would occur. And then this is just the existing elevation as is. Therefore, the application is considered acceptable and is recommended for approval, subject to safeguarding conditions.
Thank you very much. And could I invite Kirsty Massa to come? Oh, thank you. To come and speak. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kirsty Massa, Development Surveyor at Canterbury City Council and Project Manager for the proposed development. It is the Council's ambition and key priority to reduce the carbon output of its housing stock, its largest carbon contributor, in order to move to a low-carbon future. This ambitious target is set out in the Climate Change Action Plan adopted in 2021. Developing this pilot project for a whole house retrofit is one of the actions within the Climate Change Action Plan, and 31A St Peter's Place was selected for this project. This pilot project will become a case study of a fabric-first deep retrofit approach, and if approved, the project will inform the Council on its ambitious targets to deliver against its carbon reduction objectives. The project seeks to terminally upgrade the existing home to passive low energy building standard, thereby achieving a near zero operational carbon dwelling with sustainable design and construction measures. The project will provide other benefits, including the restoration of a dilapidated house, a reduction of CO2 emissions, and for the future occupants of the property, it will provide a comfortable living environment and reduced utility costs. If approved, 31A St Peter's Place has potential to become a local landmark and a recognisable house that residents and the local construction industry will positively associate with high levels of sustainability and energy efficiency. It is hoped that this case study will promote sustainable design and construction measures, encourage learning, inspire the district residents to decarbonise their own homes, and encourage the local construction industry to invest in retrofit skills for their workforce. The proposed retrofit and refurbishment will be part funded by Canterbury City Council and part funded by a grant from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Obtaining this planning permission is key to ensure that the Council makes the most of the opportunity presented by secured funding. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Right. I'd like to recommend that this is granted subject to safeguarding conditions. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Prentice, thank you. Comments? Any questions? Councillor Mackenzie.
Cool, thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I would just like to express how happy I am that this particular land is going to be developed on. I mean, I've walked past that building many times and I've wondered to myself, you know, what's going to happen with it? It's been quite an eyesore for quite some time. Yeah. So I'm really happy about that. I'm also really happy that about when we're in the middle of a climate emergency and an energy crisis here in the UK, there is no greater time than yesterday, in fact, to start investing in solar panels and heat pumps and energy efficiency upgrades to homes. So I can definitely support the parts of this application that are going to boost the energy efficiency and the green energy parts of this this building. And for these reasons, I am very strongly minded to support this application, unless I hear anything that changes my mind.
Thanks very much. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, I'm requesting and asking the question, is there going to be ongoing monitoring of this property? Because I'm actually quite interested in it. I mean, I've got a 1921 house. There's no way a heat source pump will work in my property because it's not insulated. And no way you can put insulation in it. Apart from you can render the outside, you can put insulation on the outside, which cost me about £30,000. So it's not really want to go down, but I'm very interested in monitoring it. So I'm wondering if that is part of this infrastructure and part of the funding. Thank you, Chair.
we have the project manager who is saying it will be monitored. And Councillor Smith afterwards.
Thanks, Chair. And yeah, like others, very glad to see we're recommending to approve this one. Thanks for all the officers' work getting it this far. It's taken a while, actually, because I was the lead councillor for climate change 2 years ago when we had the successful bid to the Shared Prosperity Fund pot, working with Nicholas Thurston, the previous climate change officer. And I think it's worth just letting people here know that, yeah, it's obviously taken a long time to do all the surveys, get the budget agreed on those survey numbers and bring it here to planning today. But actually, over and above what the officer explained to us, there's also a further vision that because there are a lot of these properties of this type in the city, that this same technology, if proven through the monitoring, as Councillor Thomas was saying, and will be a key part of this, then it could be replicated on quite a number of other properties, including council property stock, as I understand it. So there's a kind of broader significance, and hopefully many more such planning applications will come back to this committee in future asking for net zero homes to go forward. Although I probably won't be so fortunate to be subbed in on that night quite by chance. So nice to see this one coming through.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I totally agree with all the other councillors about this. It's actually wonderful we're getting towards a passive house standard on this particular building, and as a model for other buildings. But one question really, it's quite an old building. It has a very old Kent Peg tile type style roof on there. Wondered what the aerial views would look like. And obviously that's something that probably will be monitored. So I'd just be curious to know that the monitoring, as you go into conservation areas, when you look from above, what Canterbury would look like as it becomes more and more solar panelised with some of these old buildings, if that is the word. Thank you.
Yes, I think there are lots of... Councillor Jones.
Yeah, great scheme. And been ages seeing it down the end of the road, driven past it must be 1,000 times. So this is really welcome. But just wanted to ask one question, and it's not a criticism at all. It's just basically air source, ground source. I noticed it stands in quite a nice plot. Did we? And I think ground source is that more a constant efficient heat than an air source pump. I don't know if that was part of our thinking at the time, or it's just air source is the way we're going to go forward. It's not a criticism, it's an observation. I just noticed you're sitting in quite a nice plot of land there. I don't know if it's enough to do that, but because I know with air source, obviously the colder the air, the more energy it needs to actually heat the house, but ground source is a constant heat, but it may not be enough room.
Thank you. I think that perhaps, we should maybe ask some questions of Kirsty, the project manager, at a later date. Be interesting to find out a bit more about all of this, and maybe we can find an opportunity to do that. Because as we're getting into technical things, which really, it is an interesting question. No. Okay. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you may give me the same answer, actually, because it's a little technical one. I'm just slightly concerned over the replacement of UPVC windows with timber. Obviously, UPVC windows, double glazed, can be quite thermally efficient. I presume they're in such bad condition that they can't be used. Is that the situation, please?
Yes, I was going to say the same. I don't know. I thought it was a good move myself, but there you go. I think, again, technically, I don't think we can go into, it isn't usual for us to keep going back to, the project manager or the speakers on these things, and we haven't got any more information, actually. No, we don't have the technical information. So I think, as I say, it would be good to talk about the project. Maybe, we'll find a way of doing that. I think we should.
Thanks. Yeah, my concern was that we shouldn't be throwing away something that's perfectly usable, if that's the case.
Okay. Any other queries, comments? Councillor Smith.
I'll just. I think that was almost a proposal that we have an update perhaps for all councillors on this particular project, because it's actually of interest to everybody given the climate emergency. So just a footnote in that this is something perhaps the project manager can bring forward.
I think
offline to all councillors.
A briefing would be good,
Yeah,
and any other projects that are in similar vein, so that we can ask all these questions and find out what's happening.
Yep.
I think that would be good. Any other comments on the detail of this application that we have got in our possession? No. In that case, could I re-propose that we go to the vote, and that the recommendation is grant subject to safeguarding conditions. So 4 is to agree that. And Andrew, if you could run the vote, thank you.
So that vote is carried unanimously, 13 in favour.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. So we move on to the application number 10, application number CA 2301370, 23 St Augustine's Crescent, pages 86 to 91. And could I ask Andrew Gambrell to introduce the application, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for a single-storey side extension to an existing ground floor flat within Swalcliffe. It's a council-owned property, which is why it's come to the Planning Committee. Here you can see in blue kind of the extent of the extension that's proposed in order to meet kind of the ongoing needs of the occupier in that particular flat. Here you can see the proposal, so to the right where the cursor is, that's the front and the rear. And then here you can see the side elevation. So it's a fairly modest extension to the building in order to extend the bathroom provision, essentially for the occupier of the site. And here's the flat building as exists. So the extension would essentially sit kind of along the side, set back from the principal elevation to kind of reduce its overall prominence in the street scene. So overall, the application is considered acceptable in terms of character and appearance and living conditions, and for that reason is recommended for grant. Thank you.
Thank you. I would propose that that we grant, subject to safeguarding conditions. Councillor Smith, thank you very much. I've got a seconder. Anybody wish to ask any questions? Thank you. Wish to ask any questions on this one? In that case, we'll go straight to the vote. And a vote for is a vote to grant, subject to safeguarding conditions. Thank you.
So that is carried unanimously, again 13 in favour.
Thank you very much. So swiftly on. Application number 11, application number CA 2300972, Sturry Railway Station. And could I invite Ashley Keynes to introduce the application? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to Sturry Railway Station, which is within Sturry Conservation Area. The application is a committee as it's another council application. The proposal is for advertising consent for the erection and display of one non-illuminated vinyl banner attached to the railings via cable ties to the front of the railway station. The banner is a council advert promoting motorists to switch off their engines while stationary. So here, just to confirm the location of the site, this is just a representation of what will be on the sign, and then this is a mock-up to show it in position at the front. And then this is just the street scene again. So the proposed sign is small scale and temporary in nature, and therefore will preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. Therefore, the application is considered acceptable and is recommended for approval, subject to safeguarding conditions.
Thank you very much. And I would propose that we do grant, subject to safeguarding conditions, following the officer's report. And Councillor Smith is seconding for me. Thank you very much. Anybody want to make any comment? Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Thomas.
Well, of course, as the ward councillor, I'd like to say something about this. Myself and Councillor Moses have spoken to lots of residents in Sturry Ward about air quality, and it is a major concern, especially with how busy it does get along Island Road when the level crossing is down. There are council signs up at the moment along that road that urge drivers to turn their engines off, but they are quite small. And this has been raised to us by residents in Sturry as well, that they're quite small, they're hard to see, especially if you've got lots of bigger vehicles in front of you. Having this banner there, I think is a good thing. I think it would help to encourage drivers to turn their engines off, and it's something that I can welcome, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, this one, because I understand where the idea is coming from, but as a Herne Bay and Heron Ward councillor, we have real problems with banners on roundabouts and highways, and it's just a blight on Herne Bay, and it's a fight with the planning enforcement officers to actually have them removed. We get them for the wrestling, we get them for boot fairs, we get it. Honestly, it's an ongoing battle to try and get them removed. So I'm afraid on that grounds, I'm going to have to vote against this one, because I think if we allow this to happen in Sturry, it's going to set a precedent, because people to turn businesses say, well, you've got on here, this, that, and the other. So I'm of the understanding where it's trying to come from, but unfortunately, I can't support this because it's going to set a precedent for other people. Thank you, Chair.
I think we have to stick to the actual merits of this particular application, I'm being advised, although I understand where you're coming from. Anybody else want to make any comments? Councillor Prentice.
Yeah, just a declaration of interest. And I work for South Eastern, which is the tenant of the station, and it in turn leases the station from Network Rail, but I believe it's just outside the lease area, being as it's on the railings. I strongly support this application. I think we've seen the merits of air quality campaigns on St Dunstan's, just around the corner, and nationally recognised, a nationally recognised campaign, in fact, in having reduced air pollution in conjunction with the University of Kent. So I'd be interested to see how this one works, and you know, obviously the campaign itself is separate, but I have no problem with the banner being placed here, and I hope it has an impact. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Just I completely and utterly agree with my colleague there, but also just to say that one of the benefits of this kind of signage, one is two of the benefits. One is supporting our climate emergency agenda, and cutting the air pollution and improving the environment on that basis. But also it's a habit changer. There are a considerable number now of drivers who, when they come to a junction in a line of traffic, switch their engines off. And that in itself is improving the air pollution standards around the district elsewhere. So I think the use of this signage is actually quite helpful in that sense too. And I strongly support it. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. All I would say is if we put the sign in, can we make sure we make a few of them so when it starts to look all horrible and messy and fall to bits, it doesn't just look like that. Someone goes out and monitors it, and then you have to change it, because going up, my colleague said, obviously, when the signs are up, if they're going to go in place, let's keep them nice, keep them vibrant, so people can actually see what they are, rather than, you know, it's like you see them and all of a sudden for months they're just hanging off the wall. So we could just keep on top of that, would be wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Actually, just thinking again, I mean, I know there was something about this in the agenda, but I wonder if I could just seek some further clarification. Would it be possible to, in fact, make it bigger and more visible for people on the roads?
If they design, I mean, I like this design much better than the ones at St Dunstan's. I've made that comment already about this in the pre-meeting. It's clearer, it's got a picture on it, it's bright. Though I think it does meet some of those criteria. You know, the other ones are very small, and there's too many words on them. So I hope we are going to get one like that, not just illustrative, but that's good. So anyway, can I move to the vote, please? A vote for is a vote to agree to grant subject to safeguarding conditions.
So that vote is carried, Chair, with 12 in favour, 1 against and none abstaining.
Thank you very much, everybody. Just one or two comments at the end of the meeting. There are no planning appeal decisions to report at this meeting, and there are no items of urgent business to be dealt with in the public, and there's no exclusion of the press and public required. No business which falls under exempt provisions, and the date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 14th of November, 2023. I close the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for your consideration.